Hey beautifuls, I had a little bit of trouble going live this morning, so I'm a little bit late because I'm like, why won't it let me go live? What the fuck? What's actually happening here? It was like all chilled and ready and calm and beautiful and collected for the heart, and then I'm like, why won't it let me go live? God damn it. Funny thing about those reactions or responses, and I feel that it's a big part of the heart chakra that we're going to talk about today for the heart chakra consciousness as we kick off the heart chakra consciousness week. So a little side note about the weeks of the chakras, I was getting a strong message yesterday as well that it's not just the like, you know, we're on Monday or Sunday depending on where you are in the world, and it's like, you know, Sunday, Monday to like the next Sunday, Monday. I feel like the weeks of the chakra consciousness, like this is now, I think this is like the 5th year that we've run this chakra journey every year. And so technically, and I was thinking about this yesterday on my walk yesterday, which by the way, there was a massive snake on my walk. I don't know if you saw in my stories. I'm like, what are the chances of another big snake? And it was like, I was well away from home. It wasn't the same snake. And so it's getting the strong message that really this chakra consciousness live stream that I do about the particular chakra is like right in the middle. So it's like the week, you know, it's kind of like on Wednesday, Thursday, we move into the solar plexus. And so like we're kind of in the middle of it. And so if we really feel into the past couple of days, like have you been more in your heart or your throat? Like we've come out of the throat chakra consciousness and now we're diving into the heart, right? So as always, let me share this and then we shall get started now that I'm finally alive, because I was like, what is going on? I tried my other phone and I'm like, I don't know what's going on. It's a little bit what all right. So, and I'm curious how you're all feeling after that, what is that, after the full moon, super full moon last week. That was pretty big. That was pretty big for people, right? I'm curious how you were feeling about that because, oh my God, it was massive. It was so massive. Okay. Okay, don't do funny things to me right now. Wait. Okay. I'm not sure why that's doing that either. Let me just pop that in again. It's a bit weird. What's happening today? All right. Technology is amazing when it works. I always say, I love technology. I love technology. All right, deep in the heart chakra consciousness. This is going to be a pretty big one. Oh my goodness, there's dirt all over my desk because my cats, they go outside in the morning because it's like cold and dewy and wet. And they just come back in and they're like all in mud. They're like covered in mud. They want to jump on my white quilt on my bed. I'm like, I don't think so. I don't think so. I don't think so. Then they come and jump on my desk and I'm like, okay. What is happening here? All right, I think we got it now. Okay, goodness me. I think I need to like make myself come live like 10 minutes before because I'm like, what is happening? This has just taken so long this morning, but that's okay. That's okay. We're making it happen. All right, I think we're sorted now. The heart. Now I'll just bring up the comments and I can see what you're writing to me because sometimes they don't go on the screen. Hi, people. It's been hard journey. Speaking truth, it is hard and people are not liking it. Your heart chakra is not that great. Yes, it's 8:12 in the morning. here. I would be outside, but I just didn't want to deal with the cold this morning. It's really cold, so I'm in here with my heater. Hi Pauline, Sharon, there's lots of people here. All right. So the thing about speaking the truth and people not liking it is that happens, right? You know, like the truth, as they say, the truth can hurt, right? But the truth is the thing that also sets us free. And that's really important when it comes to our heart. So your heart, and I'm probably going to say things that you already know here. Okay, so deep on the heart chakra consciousness, your heart, right? Your heart is pure. Your heart is pure. It is innocent. It is absolutely magnificent. It is this beaming, beautiful piece of equipment, this beautiful, beating, pulsing energy center that is just so full of love. And just the word that kept coming through this morning is just pure. Absolutely pure. Pure essence. That's what your heart is. That's your heart. And everybody actually has this pure heart. Every single human on this planet has this pure heart, this pure essence. Now, some people might start disagreeing with me here, and that's okay. But I am going to say it anyway because it's truth. I'm talking about speaking our truth. Every single person on the planet, are we speaking truth? Every single person on the planet has this pure heart, this pure divine essence. Everyone has it. Even the bad people, they also have it, right? What we're talking about here, it sounds like throat chakra consciousness because we're talking about the shadow. We're talking about what's underneath the shadow. We're talking about what's underneath this gift. We're talking about what's underneath all the stuff on the outside. Every single person has this pure, innocent, absolute, just the most amazing thing that you could ever experience. Everybody has this, including you. Your heart, now this is, I want to say a little bit contradictory what I'm about to say, but it's a way that I'm trying to explain what they kept showing to me last night about the heart chakra. So you got this, you're born, right? Would you agree that you are born and everybody is born into this world with this pure essence of heart? Every little baby, every single little baby is like, oh, this pure essence of heart, this pure connection, this pure truth, this pure, opulent, just infinite source of energy, this little baby. Everybody experiences that when they feel a little baby. It's like this purity, absolutely purity and innocent. You are born with this pure heart, and you are born into a container and a cage that has all these, I want to say, bars on it, like a cage, like a prison. I know this sounds a little bit like, ugh, right? But that's kind of what happens to our heart. This container and this cage gets placed around our pure essence as soon as we also enter this place. Now, what I mean by that is, number one, yeah, it could be our physical body, sure. But really what I'm referring to here is the generational patterns that we're born into. It's the family system that we're born into. It's the belief system that we are born into, but also come into from all the baggage from past lives that we carry. And so sometimes our heart can feel a little bit bogged down. Sometimes our heart can feel a little bit caged in. Sometimes our heart can feel pretty hurt and depressed. And maybe when we come in, we're pretty good actually. We're like, yeah, we're this child, and but very soon we kind of have all these layers of prison walls or cages or chicken wire fences around us. And all of that represents all the generational patterns, all the belief systems, all the hurts and pains from this life, from previous lives, from all the places, right? When you can understand that your heart is of pure essence and that hasn't gone away, it just has a few cages around it, you can always find the truth in your heart again. I feel sometimes when we get to the heart chakra, we have a lot of grief. Some people have a lot of grief. If you've someone who has grieved a lot, sometimes there can be a lot of joy that comes back into the heart. Regardless, what happens when we get to the heart is that we remember who we are again. We remember who we are. We're like, oh, how did I forget that that's who I was? How did I lose myself in that relationship? Why did I put all those things aside that brought my heart alive? Why did I do that? And sometimes there can be grief in the reconnection that you put yourself aside. Now, sometimes people are very lost when they come out of a relationship, or they're just lost in general and they don't know who they are because they have a lot of cages around their heart. Again, that can be from generational trauma and all the things that we're born into this family system. And this isn't blaming your family system. This isn't anything like that. But sometimes when you ask people, what is your dreams? What is your hopes? And they go, I don't know. It's literally because they just don't remember who they are. And that's why some of this work can be quite scary for people, because there's so much to uncover. And then discovering and meeting themselves for the first time in a conscious and on a conscious level now, that's a big deal. So when we are born into this family system with this beautiful, pure heart, and then we have all these cages, I was calling them cages, around our heart, this chicken wire fences, whatever you want to call them, around. And they all represent a belief system from each family member, let's say from generational lineage, from, experiences at school, from friends, family, whatever you experience, right? Health issues, whatever it was that you grew up in, right? And so your pure heart is here, but it also has all these on it. So when we grow up, and then we, leave home or not leave home, or we meet people and we begin to have a relationship with them, I want to say the true essence of codependence or domestic violence or any of the negative aspects of a relationship are actually not about the heart. They're actually about the cages. Right? They're actually about the cages, because when we grow up, we're born and then we have all these things. This is who we are. We're walking around reality with this is the face of us, right? And so we attract other people who also have that face. And so then we've got two relationships that are just the faces of the cages. Now, what can happen is that one person, say for example, does lots of work and starts removing these layers and removing these cages, and actually their pure heart is starting to really shine. This other person could be like, who the fuck are you? What's happened here? And there can be a lot of conflict in relationships, because all of a sudden there's this purity of heart, and then there's all these cages, and they're suddenly not aligned anymore. They feel very different. So this is why when we are in a relationship, when people experience growth and separation, it doesn't mean that this can't get along, but it does mean that the dynamics of the relationship change, because what used to be two patterns of family cages locking into place because they're a match, all of a sudden they don't match anymore. Now, sometimes we can go back into relationship or experience a relationship where we're like, oh yeah, we're like really like connected because the cages are matched. All the holes line up, so to speak, right? It's an energetic match. It's the same cages, the same family system traits, the same experiences, the same energetics. So when one person shifts, right, and then they're like, oh, but I still love this person, because they're like flicking between their pure heart, or their soul, if you may, the pure heart, and the cage. And this is why some people can be really confused and they go back to relationships and like, because they're flicking from here to here, from here to here. Because this person might have done the work, but they're, I don't know what the right words are, not, I want to say, secure in themselves to trust their own heart enough to completely let go of the cage, therefore completely let go of relationships that are no longer aligned, because they're a completely different energetic vibration, they're a completely different energetic match of what's actually going on energetically. And so we can get confused and we come back down. In a way, we match and we're like, hey, cool, this is all good, we're good, right? We can do this. It's very subconscious, right? We're like, yeah, it feels good, right? Because it's a similarity, it's a feeling of home, it's a, there it is, because this is part of who you are, right? But the part of who you are is also growing and evolving. And again, doesn't mean that you can't have contact with them, blah, 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 but sometimes you actually do need to leave them. Because what once used to feel good doesn't feel good anymore. And what can happen is that this purity of heart is here. And we're like, yes, this is good. But what can happen is this purity of heart absorbs all of this. Or this person is like, what is this person doing? And there's all these like subconscious or conscious unspoken judgments about this person's life. Because this person has a purity of heart, this person knows the infinite possibilities, this person is connected to something that is just out of this world. It's the purity of soul, and in that is the limitless possibilities of all of life, and we're just so connected, and we're like, anything is possible, we make anything as possible. Like, there's a lot of people like that. And then this person still stuck in their cage is like, what the fuck is that person doing? Like, and they might not even voice it to them. But what happens is this beautiful open empath heart feels all of the cage and wonders what's going on. So it's almost like, because you've removed your cage, for example, right? And you're just in this whole different vibration, but you're still attracted to this because this just feels like home. It's a family. You were born into that, if that makes sense, right? So there's a familiarity there, that word. So this cage, it is like, it's not like a magnet. I don't know what the right word is. Like a cloak, let's say, right? And the cloak is like a cloak of judgments. And then this person's like, oh, I'm feeling wrong, or what did I do? Or you can't place it. You're like, I don't know, and you're feeling wrong. And this is where I talk about taking other people's energy on, right? This is like, you're just wearing the cloak. You're covered. This cage is just collapsed on you. Now this person might be feeling really good, and they're like, oh, I'm feeling good, and all of a sudden your heart is like, instead of being like, oh, you're like, you're still in your heart, but you're like, got all this stuff on you. And it's these subconscious judgments, because this person, whilst the cages are a match, this person hasn't tapped into their purity of heart. They don't feel safe in that. And so seeing you in your purity of heart is attractive, because they also have that in them. And that's gurgling and reawakening, right? But they're not ready to let go of the cage. And so this cage is like trying to pull you down. Hang on a sec. Because number one, they're trying to understand it, something they can't understand. They're also trying to, hang on, that's threatening me. Just wait on. But then you're also like still so open. So you're really taking on all this stuff, because you feel connection there because of your used to be cages. And so this whole sense of like, you just feel sometimes you feel really drained. Sometimes you just doubt yourself. Sometimes you're just not yourself. And it's because you've got other people's cages on you. And then sometimes you wake up and you're going, no. By the way, the removal from the dark mother grid, that journey that we're doing in Transcendence, and you can also purchase the removal from the dark mother grid, will soon very much show you who's on your back. Who's on your back. All these subconscious judgments, right? This is the throat chakra. The shadow of the throat is not speaking a truth, and it sits in the subconscious and it just goes poof, right? If you're in a relationship with somebody and they are not speaking their truth, as an empath, you're going to feel it and you're going to think like you've done something wrong. You're going to question everything that you're doing because this person is going, why are they doing that? Right? They're like, why is that person doing that? They shouldn't be doing that. That's wrong. I don't understand that. This is not what they're saying. This is what they're thinking. They're like, that is wrong. They shouldn't be doing that. That's not how you live a life. They're not in reality. So, and we feel that. Empaths feel that, and we carry that, and we're like, oh, and we can't place it. We're like, what is going on? And this is what I always say, if you start, you're like, amazing, and then you start feeling confused, or you start feeling like confusion, or big doubt, or just feeling off and not yourself, is a surefire sign that you're carrying somebody else's energy, right? And it's usually from that. Yeah. So it gets to a point where a purity of heart, where someone who's done work can only, I want to say, hide their light for so long. They'll either get sick, or they just will go, something will snap them out of it, and they'll just be like, no, right? They've done so much work on their cages, they're not willing to carry other people's cages. They're like, I'm not doing this. No. And they realize the difference in that resonance, and they're not willing to do that anymore. And that can take, I want to say, not just a willingness, but a deep solidarity in a sense of who they are, and a confidence in who they are, in being able to really hold their ground and shine their light. Yeah? And shine their light. And so your heart is that purity of essence. And all of these cages can be released. Again, that can come with a lot of grief, can come with a lot of joy, yeah? Because if we're in a situation where these cages are clouding us, they're going to sit on top, and you're going to feel depressed and unhappy and not yourself, and doing behaviors that you know are not yourself, or they're very old behaviors and you don't do that stuff anymore, and you're like, why is this happening again? Because you've got other people's cages that are like, I want to say, triggering your old cages, so to speak, and you're just like, and eventually you'll just go, I can't breathe in this space, I need out. Yeah? Let me check these comments here. So Gemma says, hey, big subconscious shift. Yes, did access bars, and then last night had a nightmare that someone was trying to kill me. So, big subconscious shift. So, if somebody's trying to kill you, sometimes that can be like an old part of yourself dying, depending on the context of how they're killing you, where they are, where you are, etc., can give a lot more details there as well. So if you'd like to share. Because sometimes when we're releasing those cages, so to speak, right, and we're coming in, it's like a part of us is dying. Like those old cages are not there. They're an old part of us. They do die. But yeah, probably just need a little bit more context of the dream. So Kristen says, oh wow, this is exactly what's happening in my relationship right now. It's interesting, we're in the heart, but we're talking about relationships, third eye. But of course, the heart is where the love is in a way, right? So, hi Aaron. So Leanne says, I've been doing my meditation on all my chakras. Yay! Yeah, so the Crystalline chakra activations, you can grab them. The link is in the title of this live stream, or you can find them on my website as well. So the Crystalline chakra activations, there's a chakra there's an activation for each chakra, right? So there's 9 activations in the chakra journey that you can go through. You can do, so you know, we're on the heart, right? You can do the heart chakra every day, or you could just do it once for the week, whatever feels right for you. And if you're just starting on our chakra consciousness journey, because we're already at the heart, you know, if you are just starting and you are just joining for the first time, the heart is obviously where you needed to start. So as I said last week on the throat, sometimes, you know, people have, they struggle with coming from the base chakra up, or some people struggle from the base, so from the crown down, right? And so the, you know, sometimes people need to come in at the heart, or they need to come in at the throat, and coming in at the heart can unlock both the chakra systems, you know, down and up at the same time. So trust where you start coming into the chakra journey, trust where you're being called into the chakra journey. And yeah, you can come in through the heart. So you could start at the heart, and then, you know, with the crystalline chakra activations, and then next week do the solar plexus, the sacral next week, and, you know, keep going with us on this journey. And then you can come back up to the crown and, you know, work through, or you can come in at the heart, and then you could go through and do crown, third eye, ears, throat, and then join us at the solar plexus. So there's lots of different ways you can use the chakra, crystalline chakra activations. So that's just an example. Yeah, so Pauline says, thank you so much for all your energy and just being a beautiful self. Thank you. Cam Card says, same. Hi, Joy. Okay, April says, oh my gosh, Hannah, I fucking love you. Speak my heart's truth. And I guess I feel absolutely gah. And why? Because of this, the cages. It's making so much sense. And I just use the cage as an example or an analogy to try and explain the energy. But it kind of does feel like that with everybody's judgments or generational patterns or webs or whatever, right? Everything I've been feeling, and I just thought it was me, like not wanting to help encourage others to be who they are, but honestly fucking over half the crap that comes with it, and you feel so lost. So when I get into situations that, you know, they feel good, like exactly the same example like I just gave you, right? And, you know, I'm happy in life, I love my life, I love what I do, blah, blah, blah. And then I put myself in a situation like that, and then I start doubting myself. And then I start feeling depressed. And then I don't want to do any work. And then I don't like living here. And I don't like doing anything. And like, I hate my life. Like, you know, and even like I found myself saying it last week, and I was like, I don't hate my life. This is not me, you know? And so when you know who you are, and then you know, you're like, I was just seeing these moods, and I was like, this is not who I am. I'm like, who the fuck am I carrying? You know, and I couldn't quite place it, but on a deep energetic sense, it's kind of like putting all the pieces together. I was just like, you know, even though we might not be able to pinpoint it exactly, if we've got all these like cages on us, it's like the whole energy in itself, it's like creates this huge, dense friggin' cloak of darkness that just, I want to say makes us not want to be here anymore, but that's not really the case. Sometimes it's just like everything is angry and everything is, you know? So yeah, it's like, you know, who are we hanging around? Who are we sleeping next to? Who are we, you know, connecting with online, offline, you know, who we just had contact with, who do we have a lot of contact with every day? Like, yeah, it's a big deal, right? Beatrice says, oh my God, this is exactly what I'm going through with my ex-husband. That, right? That. What's the 9th? So, yeah, so there's thousands of chakras, yeah? Just like, you know, if you go to acupuncture or, you know, meridian, etc. Like, you know, like there's heaps of acupuncture points, there's heaps of acupressure points, like the meridians in the body, there's heaps of them. There is actually thousands of chakras as well, like pretty much on all the meridian points, yeah? On the acupuncture points. So there's a limitless amount of chakras that you can open, and there's lots of different chakra systems that you can work with. I personally teach the 8 chakras, so all the 7, including the ears, which makes 8, and then I work with 9. So the 9th one is an integration. So when we've gone through the chakra journey over the next 8 weeks, the 9th week is an integration of them all. So it's a little bit longer than a week because we go through a chakra a day, which can be a little bit intense. So yeah, so the 9th is integration week, yeah? And on the 9th with integration week, it's like we go through a chakra a day. You might be like in a chakra a day, or all week you might be in the third eye chakra, or all week you might be in the solar plexus chakra, or all week you might be in the base chakra. Whatever chakra needs more attention, whatever chakra needs more support, whatever chakra needs your awareness, might just all that be, you might be having another solar plexus week. Okay, so it can be a chakra day, or you might just be on another chakra for the whole week, if that makes sense. So Gemma says, makes sense about the old fear of dying. Yes, was a man with a gun, and I just found, and he, just as he found me, I woke up. Instead of freaking out, I just rolled over, snuggled back in, and went back to sleep. Yeah, I remember several years back, actually, when I was having a few dreams and like someone was chasing me with a gun, and yeah, that's very similar in a way. Yeah, it's just when an old paradigm, I want to say, of us is dying. If we get killed in a dream by someone like that, it's like an old part of us is dying. Yeah. Yes. So Monica says, my mother passed 2 months ago and I'm in these cages now. Is that possible from a deceased person? I have been trying to do ancestral healing. In a slow process of clearing the house, I will attribute each item I remove as removing some cage and doing these ancestral healings. Are these two separate things, or are they kind of intertwined? I want to say they are deeply intertwined, and I love that you've made that connection, and I love that you're really using it as a just putting my Ugg boots back on, as a like a process of really coming into like a real physical clearing. Like, yes, for this, right? I think it was last month or this month, so about 2 weeks ago, I did the psychic development class in my Reality Awareness support group, which is free on Facebook. The psychic development class focus was mediumship. So watching that live stream on mediumship, the replay might give you a lot of insight as well, just with different aspects of the relationship. Like, there is no separation from a deceased person to an alive person. The dynamics, the energy, all of that is still the same. So I went into a lot more details about bits and pieces on mediumship. So I highly recommend watching that. I think that would really help you. On the third eye chakra consciousness week as well, we spoke a bit about mediumship as well. So that's another one that you can also have a look at too. So yeah, definitely intertwined, definitely connected. The other thing, especially when you're going through the house like that, and the grief portal, like the death portal, is heavy in itself. So there's a lot of that sort of denseness and, you know, ancestral clearing going on too. The whole dynamics of the family system that's still alive, it completely changes when somebody passes away out of the family system. So yeah, lots of moving stuff there going for you, like moving parts, I want to say, it feels like. But awesome for being aware of that. Now, it's not that you can't remove it, because you can have a mediumship session with someone like myself, for example, and, you know, we can speak to that deceased person, or you can do it yourself if you trust yourself enough like that too. And you can have those conversations that are actually healing, rather than just like, here's a message from that person. Like, either, and this is what I was talking about, I think, in the psychic development class as well, and this is what I teach in Trust Intuition. Like, you can go to a medium and they can just give you a message like, yes, hi, they say hi and they love you. Or you can actually do a full-on relationship healing and actually clear the dynamics and the past karma in there. So, because that doesn't disappear. Like, when somebody passes away, they're not this amazing angel that has all the answers. Like, they're exactly the same person as when they passed over. They just have a lot more clarity and sometimes a lot more regret and remorse, because they actually see the truth of what's going on now without all the human stuff in the way, if that makes sense. So yeah. So Kamka says, yes, I'm doing the meditations as well. Things are shifting and feels like I'm waking up again from a fog of others' energy on me. It's a big deal, right? When we really commit and do the work in these crystalline chakra activations, the crystalline chakra activations, they hold a different frequency. They're actually activating the crystalline structure of your chakra to be able to hold, embody more light into your energetic system. So they're very different to just a normal chakra clearing that I've ever done, or I don't know what other people do, but just in myself, you know, like the Crystalline Chakra activations channeled through last year. So yeah, they hold a very different frequency. And like, so when you say you've been doing them and the fog of others is lifting, like that's what happens, because as we just, you know, increase that light vibration, it's like it pushes it away in a way. Yeah. So love hearing that. So Joy says, parts of us want to die sometimes. Yeah, I feel like when we feel like we want to die, it is because a part of us is dying. And I think a lot of people get that confused. Yeah, as well. Yeah. Leanne says, can I ask you, does a symbol triangle with a circle in it, is it evil? That's an entire conversation for a different live stream, I want to say. There's an audio that I did called What on Earth is Going On. I'm not sure if you've listened to it. It's about 2 hours long. And there's a whole page on that. So you can just comment below what on earth is going on. And I kind of go into, you know, not necessarily that symbol, but parts of that symbol, not talking about that symbol directly, but what that's connected to, if you may. Transcendence that we're in at the moment. We're heading into week 3, well, we're in week 2 at the moment of transcendence, is about unplugging from the matrix and unplugging from all of that dark mother grid, all of the black satanic grid lines, and really activating your true source code. So if you're concerned about that symbol and any of its stuff that goes alongside that symbol in our current world, transcendence would be the course for you. So Joy says, what are your thoughts on singing bowls? Do you think they are effective for healing the chakras? Yes, I believe that anything is healing for the chakras or anything in your body and life if it resonates with you. And here's where we talk about the heart. So there are some things, and we talk about with our purity of heart, and then there's the cage stuff. Okay, now just like, you know, it has to resonate with you. And this is where sometimes things can resonate with us and we're like, oh yeah, it resonates with us because we feel this. And sometimes it takes what's the word? It takes practice. Simply, it takes practice. It takes practice when you're releasing yourself from your own cage and being in your heart of purity of essence, of being in your soul, of being in the truth of who you are. It takes a practice, a discipline. It is a muscle. Your heart is a muscle. Your spiritual organ is a muscle. And throughout society, we are taught, being born into this world, this purity of heart, and then we're like slapped with all the family generation, and then we're in school for 12 years, and then we've got to undo all this stuff, right? There's like layers and layers of this, like we've lost ourselves, right? And so when we are looking at, does this resonate with me? Does this not resonate with me? Like sometimes we're like, yeah, it resonates with me because we're here, and we're like, oh yeah. And then we like go along a bit and we're like, oh, like what is that? And it's not that we forgot who we are, it's just that this is also who we are. You know, like that was a part of us. And so we kind of resonate, we flick back, right? And we flick back and forth because this feels amazing, but this is home, and this is normal for us, I want to say. And so the longer we stay up here, well, then this becomes more normal, right? But when we're just starting to shift out of it, sometimes we can flick back a lot. And this is what I teach in Trust Intuition. It's not that you've gone back and you're bad. It's that every time you go back, you don't stay there for as long as you're like, oh, and you know, get to this point where you're like, oh, I know what that is. No, I'm not going there this time, right? And that applies to anything. That applies to an addiction. It applies to anything, because we can do all the meditations and all the healings with singing bowls and whatever you want, right? And they're important. They're so important. But the thing that actually heals you is the day-to-day, moment-to-moment, breath-by-breath choices that we make in our day-to-day life, because we can do all the past life work and stuff to clear all this stuff, and that's important. However, if we are doing that work and then not choosing in a day-to-day action, like, no, I'm not picking up the phone to call them, no, I'm not going to message them, no, I'm not going to hang out with that person, no, I'm not going to say yes to that anymore, right? That takes a actual physical, like, I want to say no meditation can do that for you. It's a bit like nobody can heal you. It's like you're the one that actually has to take the action to go, no, I'm not doing that anymore. Do you know what I mean? So okay, so when we're talking about singing bowls and healing and stuff, so when we talk about the resonance, okay, so some things are in resonance and we need certain healing, singing bowls, healing practices, crystals, whatever it is. Like, there's no judgment on any of it, okay? It's part of a process of the separating from the cages, okay? And I'm not talking just about the person. I'm talking about your own cage, your life, whatever, your old life, whatever. And so we like need these crystals, we need these healings, we need these practices, whatever. In Trust Intuition, which we start actually next week, guys, and I'm really excited about it because it's the first time I'm running it live. I actually got the message yesterday that I'm going to run it for 12 weeks, not 10 weeks. And this is like, this is my heart. I'm like, oh, I'll just like randomly start talking about it. I'm like, yeah, because this is my heart. So in Trust Intuition, I also teach about reality breaks. Reality breaks are important. Sometimes we get, I want to say, bogged down in the spiritual stuff. Sometimes we get bogged down in the personal development. Sometimes we get bogged down in the trauma and healing it, and there's something wrong with us and blah, 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 right? And the reality break is just having a break from all the spiritual stuff and going and living. Now, the more we go and live, the more we go and live, the more that becomes normal, and we come back for this healing and we shine our light, and then we come back to reality. But we come back to reality, I want to say, in a higher vibration, and then we're like living our light in reality all the time, and we don't need these healing tools anymore because we've integrated them, because we're just in this beautiful thing. Now, I'm not saying we don't do spiritual work, I'm not saying we don't need healing, I'm not saying we don't ever meditate again. That's not what I'm saying, right? What I'm saying is that we get to a point where we've integrated so much that we don't need that crystal. We don't need to carry that crystal around. We don't need that coffee. We don't need that thing because we've just healed all that stuff, and we're just in a completely different frequency. Now, I wanted to like do a something sparked up like this morning. So we're talking about the reactions. Okay, so the reactions come from the cages. Cages come from reactive traumas in cages. Traumas in cages create the reactions. So when we are here with the cages, there's a lot of traumas bouncing around in the cages, because trauma is your light that has been covered by this thing that is trapped. It's like, get the fuck off me. We're trying to like flick it off. This is not who I am, and we know that. And we're like, it's like when we have a big reaction, then we're like, oh my God, that's not who I am. What did I do that for again? Right? Who's done that before? And so these reactions are traumas in the cages. And these traumas are being released. The more we come out. And so, you know, we need those healing, and we need those smudge clearing, and we need the healing bowl, and we need all that, sometimes for many years. And then it gets to a point and we don't want them anymore. It's not that we don't need them or love them, it's because we've become it. So a prime example of this is that back in 2018, I used to have like the Tibetan flags around the house, and an altar set up, and all this like spiritual stuff everywhere, and Om symbols and Buddha signs and blah, 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 all around my house. And something happened, and I'm like, I don't want it. I don't want this stuff around. And I got rid of the flags, pulled it all down. I was like, oh, it's better. It's just clear. I gave it all away. I put it on Gumtree, which is like eBay here in Australia. It's one called Gumtree. And I just put it on for free, and everyone came and picked it up that day and took it all away. I was like, oh, that's better. And I said to my friend, and she's like, wow. She's like, oh, well, you've become it. You don't need it externally anymore. And I was like, yeah, that's how it feels. And it's kind of an interesting concept, right? Now, just last week, I had a similar feeling with my crystals in my house. I was like, I don't want this stuff sitting around anymore. I'm like, whoa, I still love you guys, because they're like people to me, but I'm like, what is this feeling? I was like, is this happening again? Because this is next level. I'm like, the crystals? It's a big deal. You become it. Yeah, you become it. And then we shift to a whole new frequency. So for example, when we admire people, when we look up to people, Do they have all the little things around the house, or do they have those things that, you know, like, probably not. Maybe some people do, sure. But when you really think about those things you desire, is all the things that are sitting around your house and that you carry around with you, like including your emotional baggage, so to speak, do they have that? No. What you're seeing is the purity of essence that is being lived and shone bright without all the threads to the cages still hanging on. Again, this is not a judgment. This is an understanding of the energetics of when you're craving your heart's desires and you're trying to manifest all this stuff, but you've still got all these threads to these cages, like these anchor weights holding you back. Yeah. All right, let's check here for these comments. Hang on a second. We're talking about singing bowls and stuff. Everything is important. And it's not that we never use a singing bowl again. Like, it's not that we never go to a yoga class again, or we never do those things that our soul is nourished by. It's just that the need to do them and I can't live without this, that shifts. Yeah? You're welcome, Monica. Kamka says, yay, heart feels blocked. Any suggestions? Do heart chakra meditation daily. Yes, you can do heart chakra meditation daily. It's going to say, I don't think that you're in Transcendence Reality Society, but there's light field yoga for the heart chakra in Transcendence Reality Society, which is the inner circle. But I think you're in Trust Intuition. I don't think you're in Transcendence Reality Society. So yes, you can do the heart chakra crystalline activation. If your heart feels blocked, I want to ask you, where's your joy gone? If you could do whatever you wanted to do, what would you be doing? Are you having fun? Do you laugh anymore? If it feels blocked, who has hurt your heart? I want to say that you haven't forgiven, that you haven't grieved. Because I always say, fuck forgiveness. We need to grieve first. Right? Your heart feels blocked. Where are you blocking your joy, your desires, the life you want to live? And who has broken your heart that you haven't grieved that hurt yet? Yeah? Danny says, yes, dipping my foot back into situations, as you know, so detrimental, but thankfully come out so quickly. Yes, that's the thing. We pull ourselves out. We're like, oh my God, what am I doing this cage again? No. No, I said no. And next time we're like, I'm not doing that again. Even though we might have the pulls and the desires, we're like, no, I know where that leads. I'm not doing that again. And we shift to another level again. Yeah. Joy says, makes sense. The bowls to me really help me to keep me in the moment. Yeah, and it's so important to use what's right for you. Like, it's not that you never do it again, or that you hate them, or, you know, it's wrong that you're still using them. Like, no, no, definitely not. So excited to start Trust Intuition. I know, I'm so excited about it for next week because, yeah, I was tuning into it yesterday on my walk as well. I'm like, man, this is like, you know, what channels through me when I'm live is totally in flow, right? It's totally different to a recorded, and, you know, yeah. So I'm really excited about that. So Joy says, but should we still clear our energy and smudge daily? Yes. So when I first started this spiritual journey, I was going to yoga class 3 times a week, would not miss it. You've probably heard me talk about this for like 18 months straight. I was working in the city. It became a routine. It was like solid 18 months, 3 nights a week. I wouldn't miss it for the world. I would finish work, go straight to yoga, and then I would go home. And, you know, and that changed me. That changed me. Now, do I still have such a disciplined practice of 3 nights a week every week? No. But I needed it at that time. Do I still do yoga occasionally? Yes, I do. Right? So it's really important to, you know, trust your intuition of what healing tools you need at certain times. Yeah. And so, you know, clearing energy and smudging daily. So at that same time, I was living in Brisbane, and I was also meditating for like an hour a day. I was listening to the Holosync, and it was like routine. It became my morning coffee. Like it was what I did. And that strict discipline routine changed me. Anything that you need to do for your soul and it feels good, keep doing that until it doesn't feel good anymore. This is the resonance of your heart. Okay, so you use something until it doesn't feel good anymore. So you're releasing this cage and you're meditating or you're yogaing or you're smudging or you're singing, bowling, whatever, right? You're doing whatever healing tool, whatever practices you need for your heart. And while you're doing that, what it's doing is it's making your heart stronger, your soul and your light connection stronger to source, to who you are, right? And as it's becoming stronger, what's happening is that these threads to the cages are becoming weaker and they snap, just like the spiderweb strings. They snap and they become looser and they drop off, right? And then all of a sudden you're just left here. Now, when this, you might keep doing the meditating and the singing, bowling or whatever, right? For as long as it takes. And then you'll reach to another level, like I said, and you're living it where you don't need to do it so disciplined as much as what you used to. Because the healing and the reason you were doing it has now become who you are. And whilst you still do it because it makes you feel good, just like exercising, just like eating healthy, whatever, it's maintenance, right? But it's not so intense in the healing of why you're doing it. It's just who you are now. Does that make sense? And so when we look at a resonance of things, we might still flick back to things because we're still strengthening this after all the years of being in the cage, and that takes time. When we've been in a cage for 30, 40, 50 years and we start coming out, it's not going to happen overnight, right? Give yourself a break. Be gentle, right? The heart needs to be strengthened, and that takes time and practice and dedicated discipline routine. It does. It really does. Yeah, if you want to change your life, it doesn't happen overnight. Takes dedication, commitment, discipline, turning up, strengthening those muscles. You're not going to become a bodybuilder overnight, but you must be going on a regular basis if you want to see changes, right? So, okay. So yeah, let me know if that makes sense. Danny said, 100% after the last experience, I realized again, I am the tool. I've done the work. Nothing but my choices and heart can help me. Exactly, right? Exactly that. Yeah. Yeah, and you still crave yoga. Yeah, I still do yoga too, but I don't do it 3 nights a week at a class in Brisbane anymore. Like, do you know what I mean? But I needed that time. That pulled me off drugs. That, I want to say that became my drug, and spirituality became my drug, and then I had to learn how to balance spirituality and yoga without it being my drug. Does that make sense? It was like I replaced the drugs with that, but then I had to go through a whole nother process of like, wow, how do I do this without, how do I live and not it being a drug sort of thing? So yes. So Michelle says, Hannah, I've been touching on some clearer moments to start journaling and seeing how I've been reacting on my day-to-day situations. So awesome. To see our reactions is how we start to see where our traumas, where we're being triggered, what cages are being triggered. And obviously once we work on those reactions and we work on what's trying to get out of the damn cage, what's trying to shake off you, then we come to a whole new level of self. Yeah. Yes, Trust Intuition, we start next week, so exciting. So yeah, if you can post that in the Trust Intuition group, Jasmine, that would be awesome. So Joy says, makes sense. Last year when I was really sick, I could only meditate 1 to 3 hours a day. Now I'm back to my training, exercising and not meditating as much. Yeah, because your exercising to probably become your yoga, probably become your meditating. But at the same time, you're still probably going to meditate, right? So it's like, this is the cycles of life. This is the waves that I talk about, yeah? We have to follow our heart daily and move with flow. Yes, we definitely do. That's the waves. Exactly that. All right, so heart chakra consciousness, when we are at the heart, obviously the heart is the heart. The heart chakra is associated with the color green. It's also associated with the color pink and obviously the color red as well. The heart chakra is deeply connected to our physical heart, is connected to our rhythmic system, our breathing, our lungs. It's also connected to our nose, to our sinus, and to our, our breathing system. So that, didn't I? It's also connected to, something else. Let me check. Oh, it's also connected to our arms, to our hands. You know, they say healing heart, healing hands. And also our upper spine as well. Also connected to our ears, our heart, and our base. Now, I always talk about these three chakras deeply connected. So ears, heart, and base. So shoulders, arms, upper spine, nose, breathing system, sinus, lungs, yeah? All connected. So if something going on with the arms, heart is blocked, yeah? Fingers as well, obviously different fingers have different meanings too, but left and right hand, left is feminine, receiving, masculine, giving, doing, and so if it's left, right, shoulder, you know, upper spine, where's the heart blocked in receiving or giving as well? Do you touch? Do you feel? Or you're not really a touchy person? How open, how hard, you know, open or closed is your heart? Do you sit with your shoulders hunched over, or you just sit nice straight spine and shoulders back? Yeah. Is it, how do you normally stand even? Are you even aware of that? Yeah. I find that yoga really helped me with my posture just on a general standing basis every day, which helps us to open our heart. Yeah. Hi Sean, for sure. So Leanne says, I agree with doing work on your heart. I've been doing it through shadow work. It's hard because it gets to the core of your hurts. Realizing what your hurts and how you heal, release, and move forward. It's definitely a slow process. Yes, definitely. definitely. But shadow work is awesome for speaking to the hurts in your heart, for sure. I love that you're using it like that. It's perfect. All right, so the other thing about the heart is that we're coming into following our heart. Now, this taps into what I was talking about at the start with understanding so we've got the heart and we're like, follow your heart, and people are like, what do you mean? What do you mean? I'm just doing my thing because this is just life, right? This is the cage we're living in. Some people just, that's their reality and that's fine, right? But then they have a spiritual awakening and this cage starts busting open and they're like, what is happening? And I don't know if I can do this world, and what's this my reality? Like, I don't know about this. They start doing all these changes, right? And this is the wake up. And so when we talk about following your heart, some people are just so, I want to say, caged around their heart. They don't know what their heart wants. Or maybe they were never told, you know, that they could have what they wanted as a child, or they were always told what to do. And that's so like, 12 years in school, in society, makes us not know what our heart wants because we're so used to being told, you know, what to do. This is swallowing the truth, covering up your heart, all this stuff that we've infiltrated in our heart. We've swallowed the truth for how many years? So when we start to follow our heart, sometimes that can take a little bit to even understand what you even want. And this is why I always say to people, you know, you're not lost, you're recalibrating. Because if you go through a relationship breakup, if you go through a career change, if you go through anything like that, you're uncovering all these cages that you've created, not just from your family and generational, but from the life you've just been living, say with this person or with something else. And you need to like uncover who you are without all of that. Okay. So can be a little bit confronting. Some people do know what their heart wants. And sometimes what their heart wants can be, I want to say, distorted with the cages as well, and that can be a whole nother layer to go into of like, is this what I really want? So you saw me blog about that on the weekend. Is this what I really want? And it's like, well, yeah, but it's different, but it's same. Like, it's kind of interesting, right? Because everything always does have a stemming from your soul, but sometimes it can look different to what it feels like. But the feeling is always the same because that's your soul heart awakening, guiding you in the direction. Yeah. So when we come into our heart, a lot of people struggle with that because it makes us feel. And so many people were told that it's not okay to feel. So many people were told that if you keep crying, I'm going to give you something to cry about. What your heart has to say, meaning the words coming out of your mouth, is not important. Shut up. I don't want to hear it. Be quiet. Blah, 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 blah. And so we're taught to shut down our heart. So if we're not healed from all those tiny little hurts and pains, that is an empath that just builds up and builds up and builds up and builds up. And then we're just like this case of like everyone else's judgments and like we're not good enough underneath. dropping into solar plexus, by the way, which is where we feel good enough, which is where we don't feel good enough, which is where we feel empowered or disempowered. All of that will start dropping into the solar plexus here, right? So when we look at the heart and really coming into feeling or doing meditation, a lot of people are like, I can't meditate. My mind's going at 1,000,000 miles. I can't stop thought. Number one, the purpose of meditation is not to stop your thought. It's to become the observer of the thought. So you're watching all these things go by, like, oh, this thought and that thought, oh, that's interesting. So instead of being your thoughts, you become the observer to your thoughts. And it takes practice. When you start a disciplined meditation routine, for the first 10 minutes, even when I sit down, I'm like, okay, cool, like this, like distraction, sitting, moving around. Okay, cool, I'm comfortable. Yeah, okay, I'm comfortable. Yeah, okay, no, I'm not. Yep. Okay. Like for the first 10 minutes, like it's like a thing, right? And then it's like after that first 10 minutes, then I start to, okay, cool. I start to drop into it. Now, the more you do a disciplined meditation routine, the faster you're going to drop into that space because you're training muscles, right? You're training yourself to sit there and be still and to become the observer. That does drop in faster and faster, but you have to give yourself like 10, 20 minutes, like minimum, to then, you know, understand and experience the essence of meditation, because for the first 10 minutes, nobody's going to sit still unless you've been doing it every day for 2 years, right? So just to give you that little tip there. The other thing that happens is that the reason our mind is going 1,000,000 miles an hour is because we've got all these feelings in our heart that we don't want to feel. And so it pushes it up into the head, and the head's going, trying to figure out all these things. And you can feel when somebody's got feelings coming up because they're like, kids run around rampant and like because they've just got so many feelings in their heart and they just need to fucking cry. It is a scientifically proven fact that a person who cries and tears are released from their eyes, that happens when we cry, those tears release the stress hormone cortisol. Now, cortisol is the thing that keeps us in adrenaline, keeps us in the flight or fight, keeps us like in that fast pace, like it burns us out, right? And we're taught in this society that that's normal. And alongside that, it's harder for people to cry because they're in that flight or fight, they're in that stress out space, they're in that, but that becomes normal. And so we're like, and a lot of people can't go to sleep, or they're just like, you know, they go crazy. And usually when we've got a lot of feelings coming up, we're even more, right? So and you'll feel that in yourself when you're about to have a big like reaction or breakout or whatever. It's because you've got all these feelings come out and you just need to cry. So it's a scientifically proven fact that people who cry whilst being held in a supportive environment or a supportive person in front of them, you know, letting them cry and saying, it's okay, I'm here for you, whatever, that person who has had a big cry in that sort of an environment has, after the cry, their brain waves were, you know, monitored, tested, and their brain waves were deeper than a meditating Zen monk. Crying releases the stress hormone cortisol. Now, if you can't cry, or if there's someone that's running rampant like a child, or someone you know, and they're just like, they've got feelings in their heart and they're not ready to feel them. They don't feel safe enough to feel them because maybe as a child they were taught that it's not okay to cry. Yeah. So when we're coming into the presence of our heart, when we're coming into meditating, when we're coming in, you know, a lot of people won't sit down and meditate because subconsciously they know there's a lot of feelings that they're going to face, and that's really uncomfortable, and I'm not doing that, so I'm just going to go watch Netflix instead. Or have that extra glass of wine, or do whatever the thing is. Yeah? So meditating becomes a disciplined practice that we face the feelings we've been avoiding even when we don't want to face them. And this is why divine step number 6 of the 12 divine steps to awakening your life purpose is discipline. We turn up and do the thing that we know is going to fuel our soul, that we know is going to release and strengthen our heart, you know, release those threads to the cage and strengthen our heart. We turn up and do those practices even when we don't feel like it. Even when we're probably going to bawl our eyes out crying. Even this is discipline. You want to awaken your life purpose. Divine step number 6 is discipline for the practices that we know are going to strengthen our heart and the ones that are healing us to release the threads from the cage. The cages. Does that make sense? It's not easy. There's a lot of people who don't do it because they don't have the support systems around them, the confidence in self, or the understanding that that's actually what's happening. Yeah? A disciplined practice around whatever healing practices work for you. It could be a chunk of meditation. It could be a chunk of yoga classes. It could be all combined. It could be something else. Do whatever feels right for you and commit to it. The times when you don't want to do it are the times you're about to break through to that next level of strength. Yeah? And all the distractions, all the sabotage will come up in that space. Do you really want to do it? Are you sure? Are you really going to do it? Yes, I am actually. But I don't fucking feel like it. But I know I have to do this to feel better, so fucking whatever. Okay, I'll do it. Fine. Who's had that feeling before? And then 10 minutes after it, 10 minutes into it, we're like, oh, okay, this starts to feel good. And then afterwards, we're like, oh my God, I'm so glad I did that. Who's had that feeling before? Yeah. Definitely been told to essentially shut down the heart. Yeah, it's a big one, right? It fucking hurts. It hurts. It's a big one. Oh my God. And then it takes a while for us to remember who we are again and come back out and even feel safe to open again. And we put ourselves in our own cage then. So we've got all these other cages and then we put our own self in our own cage because we're like, oh my God. Big, yeah? It's really, really big. Not easy, and that's why you need to support around mentors, get around people, groups, I wouldn't be where I am today without my mentors. I just wouldn't. It wouldn't be. All right, so just checking in. What else comes into the heart? So when we're talking about feeling the feelings in the heart, as I always say, fuck forgiveness. I say fuck forgiveness. Why? Because we can be, oh yes, I gotta forgive them. And this comes from the societal judgment, right? Of all of that. Societal training. You must forgive them for their sins and your sins and blah, 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 blah. And we're seething underneath. We're okay. And this is all the anger and resentment that turns to cancer and all sorts of nasty things. Because actually we're seething inside and it just starts attacking our own self because we're for fuck's sake. We're not heard. We're not all the things. So when we really drop into the feelings, forgiveness is a byproduct for releasing the feelings stuck in your heart. The hurt, the pain, the betrayal, whatever it is. Divine step number 4 is forgiveness in the 12 divine steps. And I use it like a beacon. If you know you need to forgive someone, it's a sign that you've been carrying resentment. It's a sign that you haven't worked through that issue from the past. And that's kind of like an anchor weight. It's blocking you. It's holding you down. Yeah? So forgiveness, if you get that sort of thought of oh, I need to forgive them. It's actually, I need to cry more about that situation. I actually haven't healed from that. It actually hurts my heart. That's actually really strong. That I need to work on that still. Actually, yeah, I haven't worked on that. I need to look at that. Yeah? So when we look at consciously feeling our emotions, we start to learn to love all of ourselves. Because as a child, that example, stop crying or give you something to cry about, or shutting our own heart down, or somewhere sharing our joy and our passion, and someone goes, well, how the fuck are you going to afford that? How are you going to do that? And you're and you already know how you're going to figure that out, and the universe has got your back on it and all that sort of stuff. And you're you're just more shocked that they don't understand. What do you mean? Sharing your joy and your passion, and they say something and you just fully take it to heart and you put yourself in the own cage, and then you're oh yeah, just forget about that. But you don't forget about it, but you hurt as well. And you're then you're just scared to come out and even do it because you know what they're going to think about it. So then you just go around in a circle and your heart's trapped and you can't breathe anymore in this situation, and you got anxiety and all these problems because you just put yourself in this own cage, and then you're scared to come out, and you're just oh my God. It's it's a vicious cycle, isn't it? Oh my God. Oh my God. And that's why a discipline to strengthen the practices of your own heart so that you can become stronger no matter who's around you. But if you're still falling back into the cage of your own heart, then you just need more time to strengthen this. Sometimes, usually most of the time, without these people around. It's kind of a reality. And like, you know, I don't know, maybe there is. Sure, maybe there is on the planet. I get that. But I guarantee you at some point in time, there's a lot of successful people that have had to walk away from people for a period of time or forever that have been pulling them down in some way, shape or form. Because it's a negative energy that will pull you down, that makes you doubt yourself, that makes you put yourself in your own cage. And then it gets to a point where you're like, I'm not doing that anymore. When we learn to consciously feel all our feelings and love all our emotions, no matter what they are, we learn to love our whole self. And when somebody else in front of us doesn't accept all of our emotions and all of our whole self as well, it sometimes confuses us. And then we get to a point where we're like, you know what? This doesn't work for me anymore because this is my whole self. And I love my whole self more than I do this relationship who doesn't love my whole self. And this is where the strength really comes in. I don't know if you can hear the cows outside. The farmer must have arrived. They'll come running up to the fence. The cow is the nurturing. The cow is the mother healing, and the mother loves her child unconditionally in all the pieces. And this is where we come into that deep healing of the heart, of the beautiful divine feminine, because the heart is the feminine. The heart is your intuition. The heart is your feeling. And if you're blocked in your heart, you're probably blocked in your intuition in some way. You've probably lost trust in yourself and your intuition. As I always say, that your heart is your intuition. Your heart is your compass. Your heart is your guiding point. Your heart is your intuition. If you don't trust a person, you've actually lost trust in your own heart. It's not about them because you put yourself in your own cage because you went back in that situation, or that situation arose, or you don't trust your own heart anymore. Not trusting them is a reflection of you not trusting yourself. And again, we're starting to drop into solar plexus, because in the solar plexus is where we trust. We trust our whole light. We trust our whole divine self. The solar plexus is yellow. It's bright like the sun. We feel our feelings to love all of ourselves, and then our light shines bright. All parts of ourselves. Empowering ourselves with those practices that strengthen our heart. Yeah? Yes, Monique says, oh my God, yes. My own cage is made of steel. Awesome realization, because sometimes that's really confronting to realize we've put a cage of steel around our heart. That's like, I feel for me, that was one of the biggest things that made me cry the most, was how much I'd actually closed my heart and I didn't even realize. Like, that was a big deal. That was huge. Oh my God, that was probably the biggest grief I felt. You know, and I think I've felt a lot of grief when I've lost relationships and stuff like that. But honestly, the steel cage around my own heart, that was the biggest grief ever. I was just like, I can't believe that this happened. I can't believe I did that. Like, that was big. That was big, yeah. So Leanne says, yes, I cried a lot during my transformation. I find it's a good relief, but I cried alone, because some people think you cry if you're weak, or you're lying about what you're crying about, but fuck them, it's me emotions, yes. Yeah, and sometimes we don't have someone to cry with, for sure, definitely, and I still think it's healing when we are witnessing our own self crying, for the sense that we know that we're healing crying. I feel if we're crying out of a sense of, like, there's a different feeling, right, of just crying and feeling alone, whereas crying and feeling alone, but we know we're witnessing ourselves crying alone, is a different vibration and healing to just crying alone with unconsciousness, if that makes sense. I think there's a big difference there. So even if you don't have somebody to witness you crying, when you have that own witness of your own self and you understand this, I feel that does heal, whereas that unconscious crying can be more traumatizing, right? And that's like the basis of what's the parenting, like the authoritarian parenting of, like, the cried out method. It's like the most detrimental thing to a human ever on this planet, you know, like leave the baby in the room to cry alone, and eventually they stop crying. Eventually they stop crying because their abandonment kicks in, like a psychological thing happens. They realize no one's coming and no one's there for them, so they just they don't ever speak again, basically. And it's really detrimental. So for example, that sort of unconscious crying, whether you're an adult or you're a baby, is really like not healing, I want to say, even though it will release some stress, yeah. But the full witnessing your own self grieving is very, very powerful, yeah. Marina says completely have closed down, put down, and completely stopped. Yeah, it's intense, right? It's really intense when we realize that. That's probably one of the biggest grief aspects that comes out of that, yeah. Yeah, some people just feel uncomfortable with it too. I cry alone all the time. Yeah, it does. It's a whole another level to be able to cry that vulnerably in front of somebody who's even lovingly supporting you in that too. Like that opens up a whole new energy for you to be witnessed like that too. There's a big healing that happens there. So I'd definitely be open to that on your radar at some point in your life, because that's a whole next level with it for sure. But only, you know, only with someone that you know will hold that space, right? Because sometimes you'll get the other feedback and it totally, say, backfires. It's just, yeah, you know who the right person is, so to speak. I'm just sitting in the park on the bench with a baby, and there is a lady crying on the bench next to her. Yeah, just ask if she's okay. Just say, are you okay? I'm here. If you need to talk, I'm here. That's what I'd be saying. Kind of interesting reflection when that happens around us too, Alina. It's like your inner self crying, like the reflection, like turned up in a way. Hi, Lisa. Joy says, sometimes when I'm crying and feel alone, I know I need an inner child healing meditation. Yeah, so alone, feeling alone comes from inner child, definitely. We work with inner child that can heal the aloneness and the abandonment feeling for sure. Obviously, there's lots of practices you can do for healing abandonment wounds, but inner child is like the big one. All right, so I just see what else wants to be talked about. Okay, so 2 more things. Actually, there's so much on the heart I could talk about. Till the cows come home. They did come home. Oh, that's funny. I've been saying that a lot, probably because the cow's there. Okay, your feelings never lie. Trust them. Some people have a lot of trouble trusting their intuition because of everything we've talked about on this live stream. And because your heart flicks between here and here. And again, we're not trusting our feelings because we flick down here. And then we're like, we know that this is not our true self. We know that the cage is not who we really are. And so I feel like we can get confused in our feelings and our intuition, because this is our intuition and this is our feelings, this is our emotions. Our emotions are the old baggage, are the cages, and our feelings are our intuition, okay? And we can get confused between the two because this feels so comfortable and at home. And I want to say it'll feel good for a bit, and then it won't feel good anymore. And that's because it's not a resonance of your true self, of your true frequency, right? And so when we're really like coming into that space, it's really looking at this deep sense of self to who you really are, if that makes sense. Yeah. And so that's where the confusion comes in. So you can, if you start feeling, it's like, yeah, it's good, but then you feel confused, is like this sense of like, am I living a lie? All right. Because the lie is actually this. And sometimes we think that our partner's lying or the person in our life is lying because this is the lie. The cage is actually the lie. Does that make sense? And when we leave, we're like, oh yeah, we see the truth now. Like, it's interesting, yeah? The other thing about grieving and the crying is that it takes time, right? If you haven't grieved or cried before, when you start allowing the tears and you start to feel safe and you know it's healing and you start doing this crying, I want to remind you that, and the same with a child, if you start listening to their feelings, right? This is basis in aware parenting. If you start listening to their feelings, there's going to be a backlog. If you haven't cried for most of your life, you've got 30 years of backlog there. If you start lifting a lid on that, it's going to be a chunk of time, and I'm talking a good 18 months or so, right? If you haven't really cried or grieved the hurts in the past for, however old you are, there's going to be a backlog. And as soon as you start lifting that lid, It's gonna like come in waves and it will go on for time. It'll feel like at times you can't stop crying. And it's so important that you really give yourself a break in a sense of like, oh yes, I'm healing from like my entire lifetime, right? And it's like, again, this is where you need support, because people will say that you need to stop crying, it's not healthy for you. Well, actually it releases the stress hormone cortisol. It's actually really healthy to cry, but again, it's the healing cry, okay, not the sort of abandonment cry or victim cry. And I don't like using those words, but there's a definite difference there, okay? So when you start allowing yourself for the tears to flow finally in your life, there will be a backlog. And I want to say you really need support to be able to understand that, to know that it's okay and to go through that, because a lot of people don't, because this 30 or 40 or 50 years of like training to hold back those tears and it's not safe to cry are going to kick in time and time again the more you start going on. If you look at a timeline of like 40 or 50 years or whatever it is, right, and then you start crying and you get to here and you wonder why it stops again, or you're like, oh, this doesn't feel right. We have to remember like this couple of months or this year even of like 50 years is a bit it's not balanced at all. Do you know what I mean? So you have to remember that, and it's so important. The grief will come in waves. It'll be like big waves of just crying for days even, and then it'll kind of like stop and you're like, oh, okay, cool, like getting on with life. And then another wave will hit a week or two or a month later, and then it'll happen again. And it comes in waves. This is a normal cycle for healing, okay? It's so important to remember that too. You're so welcome, Kamka. Awesome live. Yes, thank you. So Alina says, sometimes I feel like my relationship is one big lie. It's fake. Yeah, it's because it's this. Yeah, it's the cages. That's what that is. Yeah. Big time. That's what that is. All right, just having a look here. Okay. So is there anything else particularly that wants to speak about with the hearts? So the archangels are Archangel Chamuel, which is life purpose. Our heart lives in our life purpose. Yes, it's base chakra, but follow your heart, follow your bliss. Your soul is your heart. You're like shining bright. Like you're happy. Follow the happiness, follow the bliss. Sometimes in the cages, it's hard to find that, right? But there's truth in that. Life purpose. Archangel Chamuel is the life purpose archangel. He's connected to the heart. And so is Archangel Raguel, which is helping with relationship healing. And Archangel Raphael, of course, the heart healer. So I'm going to finish this heart chakra live stream with the final analysis. You might have heard it before, by Mother Teresa. People are often unreasonable, illogical, and self-centered. Forgive them anyway. That is the cages. Unreasonable, illogical, self-centered, the traumas bouncing around in these cages going, get the fuck off me, right? If you are kind, people may accuse you of self-ulterior motives. Be kind anyway, right? Your kindness, they're like, what's this person doing? Cage talking. If you are successful, you will win some false friends and some true enemies. Succeed anyway. Cages. If you are honest and frank, people may cheat you. Be honest and frank anyway. Right? So it's all the cages. You can see these projections, right? And you can even look at these projections of yourself and uncovering, right? I was speaking about this with a client yesterday too. She said, how do you deal with the haters? And I was like, well, sometimes I have a little reaction about that. Sometimes it's a big reaction depending on what's going on, right? And it's the cage. Of course we get hurt. We're human, right? But as the heart gets stronger, as we get stronger, we see it as a projection of, number one, a person stuck in their cage, but also a projection of throat chakra, of my shadow, still a thread here. And so if I integrate that through shadow work, I become stronger because that integrates and that thread is no longer there. Yeah? What you spend years building, someone may destroy overnight. Build anyway. If you find serenity and happiness, they may be jealous. Be happy anyway. Your heart light is burning and busting to come out. The good you do today, people will often forget tomorrow. do good anyway, because people are so busy in their cages. Give the world the best you have. And I'm going to say they're busy in their cages because the trauma's trying to get out, and that keeps them busy. It's like the feelings in the heart. They're like, don't want to feel, so they're like, same thing. It's like trying to get out. It's trying to get out. The heart's trying to get out. Let me out. Right? Give the world the best you have, and it may never be enough, because these cages are like, but it's not enough. Let me out. It's all they're focusing on. Let me out. Underneath, that's all it is, right? Give the world your best you've got anyway. You see, in the final analysis, it is all between you and God. It was never between you and them anyway. Between you and your heart. That's all it's about, is your heart. You're going to go back in the cage, or you're going to come out. You're going to go back in the cage, or you're going to come out. You're going to like be, pulled into someone else's cage, or you're going to be strong in your own heart. And the discipline practices are what does that. Yeah? That, beautiful people, is the heart chakra consciousness. I feel like there's so much more I could talk about it, but there's a whole course coming up. I'm currently filming ear chakra consciousness, and we drop into throat, and then the heart chakra consciousness will come through as well. So really allowing your heart to fly free, allowing your heart to be completely open and strengthened can take time, practice, and you must be supported by people who also have this strong, open heart, or it's going to be harder and you're going to get pulled into these really comfortable cages all the time. Yeah? So how did you guys find the heart chakra? Do you have any questions about heart chakra consciousness? So Leanne says, Joy, my mother too, and she never dealt with it, and I feel she put those emotions onto us. Yes, that's the projection. That's the cage. It's you. And what I always say, this is the throat chakra. There's 3 fingers pointing back at yourself. You want to pull that trigger back on yourself instead of pointing it at them, right? She couldn't tell us she loved us, even though I know she loved us, but now I realize that crippled me in my heart, and that's what I'm healing from too. It's a big one when we're coming into understanding, you know, the healing part and understanding why, or I feel like when we do this healing journey, we understand more about ourselves, but we understand other people's behavior as well. And sometimes there's always a deep grieving process that happens when we realize why that person was like they were and how that affected us, and we didn't get the needs met that we needed as a child. And so I feel like it's really important to honor that grief process, because that's part of the healing. And then we come into the, like I said, the forgiveness is the byproduct. And I want to say forgiveness is just your purity of heart. Yeah, because when we're grieving and releasing all that grief or hurt or pain, what's happening is the cage is dissolving. And so this is pure forgiveness, pure love, pure all this purity. This is where the forgiveness happens. And it's not that we're like, oh, I forgive you now. It's just that we just feel different about it. We're not carrying all the projections and stuck in the cages stuff. Yeah? Yeah. Allow yourself the time to heal. It's so important. I love you guys. I shall see you very soon. We've got Trust Intuition starting next week. If you really want to heal your heart and release all of these traumas that are keeping you caged up in the reactive spaces, then Trust Intuition is definitely the space for you. Send me a message if you'd like the link for the details, or you can find it on my website, realityawareness.com, or also on my Facebook page, Reality Awareness. I shall see you guys really soon. Love you. Bye.